in the bathroom. A lot to play with. That's definitely not a tongue twister warm-up at all. I just found that sentence. Welcome to Folie, Deux, the podcast where we rate and rant all things spooky. But really, it's just movies.
Just movies.
It's just movies, man. And speaking of movies, what movie did we watch for this episode? I know it's a secret to everyone because everyone they find a new episode and they go, "Yes, Folie, Deux, let's do it." I don't even care what movie they're reviewing. I want to hear. I want to see. I want to experience everything. What movie did we just watch?
Well, all three listeners that we have will be really excited to know that. It was Psycho. We got Psycho this week.
Oh my God. And I'm sure no one has ever seen this movie, so I'm sure this is going to be great. I'm sure everything that we're about to say has never been said ever about this movie.
It's kind of indie art house kind of a...
Yeah, it's been like under the radar for a while. No, I don't think anyone's really... I've never really heard anyone talk about this movie, so...
Here we are. Here we are. What no one else has done.
This is our civic duty to really talk about this movie, I think. So... let's just get into it, okay? So, Psycho came out in 1960, way back in 1960. And the director is some dude named Alfred Hitchcock. He directed such movies like The Birds and Vertigo. Have you seen either of those?
I've seen both of them, yeah.
Guess what? I haven't. I haven't seen any of those movies. I really have. Like, even for this movie, I don't remember watching the whole movie. Obviously, I know everything about this movie, which I think is kind of unfortunate because it was a good movie. Mm-hmm. And I wish I didn't know anything about this movie just to have that. Like, I wish I came into this movie with literally nothing. I wanted this to be completely fresh because I'm sure my rating would go up even higher because of it. That's just like kind of how I thought about it while we were watching. I'm like, oh man, I just wish I didn't know what I already know. So it kind of ruins the experience, but that's my
experience.
That's my experience. Yep. Yeah. So the cast is Anthony Perkins. He played Norman Bates. And then Vera Miles. She played Lila Crane. John Gavin. He was Sam Loomis. And then Janet Leigh. Leigh. Lee. She was Marion Crane. Mm-hmm. So I guess the initial thoughts. What are your thoughts of this movie, Jessica?
I like it. Yeah. It's one of those old movies that there are certain things that just don't hold up. You know, the scare factor isn't there, but I think the plot it's always going to be interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a good classic for me.
I think too, we were talking about how this movie is very much another one of those cases where you're like, why wouldn't you have done this? Or why wouldn't you do that? And then we kind of have to like check ourselves and be like, well, we have to, be within these times, the context of the world that they're in, as in the year that it's in.
The social structure.
Yeah, how they talk. It's just like, it can be hard for us just in that sense.
It's really hard to separate yourself when you're watching a movie that was done so long ago.
Right. You're like, a lot of the things were just like, well, it stopped raining, so just leave. Why do you have to stay? Yeah. Especially when she has just like
all the
shit ton of money. Yeah, all the red flags, him. Yeah, it's just like, just go. But
it's not always going to hold up over time.
Right. But I mean, it's a classic, and I think
it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess with that, do you want to just go straight into the movie? I'm gonna interject with some of the trivia that
I was actually curious. I just thought of this. So we've been watching a few Stephen King movies, and he has those like tropes that he usually hits. Do we know does Alfred Hitchcock have any besides kind of doing a small cameo in each one? And it's usually like a thin blonde woman who is the main character.
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies personally, so I don't know too much about the common themes. What are some of the common themes that you're seeing besides just that?
Well, that's why I was asking.
Is there like twists? Is he like known for twists?
So I have seen The Birds and Vertigo, and I've seen North by Northwest. And I wouldn't say that all of them have, some of them do have twists, but not all of them. So I guess besides those kind of first two tropes, I don't really know if there are any defined ones. Which is why I was asking you, Mr. Trivia.
I didn't see anything. All the stuff that I looked up, I didn't see anything about his own kind of tropes, just like Stephen King. Mm-hmm. I think Stephen King's are just more polarizing.
I was just curious,
noticeable.
Yeah, just because we have been doing Stephen King recently. So.
Well, let's just keep that to Stephen King. Okay, Stephen King movies. That's like his thing. So then now it's our thing to point it out. So I guess that's good. Thank you, Stephen King, for that. But Alfred Hitchcock is just like
a perv.
Yes. So let's go into the movie. Okay. How about that?
Okay, so beginning of this movie, we have our main character. Well, I shouldn't say main character. She's the first characters that we are introduced. We have Marion Crane and her out-of-town lover, Sam Loomis, who they have had like a kind of afternoon rendezvous at a hotel. And this is in Phoenix, Arizona.
Which like to that, he has his shirt off and she's in literally her like bra, which I remember watching. I'm like, this is 1960, right? Like, dang, this has got to be, controversial just right off the bat, like right in the beginning of the movie. It's got to be controversial just based on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't remember if it is North by Northwest when they had limits on how long couples could kiss, where it could only like it couldn't like exceed a maximum of like a few seconds.
Sure.
So there, and I remember in one of like my film classes that the teacher had pointed that out, and I think it was that movie, but it was just like a scene where they're like kissing and then they stop and they talk, and it's like kind of just viewing it, you think that it's the characters' kind of personalities and charisma, and they're just going back and forth, but really it's because they had limitations on how long a couple could kiss. So seeing her in just her bra and like a skirt, I remember thinking like, oh wow, it's kind of raunchy for the 60s.
And this movie too is very special in the sense that
there's a shower scene where we have her and we don't see her completely, but
they leave the illusion that you could. And I feel like I'm sure they love that just in the sense of making it feel realistic. Mm-hmm. But she definitely was covered up. She had specific, like they had like, I think it was like moleskin material that she wore during that scene. But I'll talk more specifically on that.
But so we have Marion and Sam in a hotel room. They had just finished like having sex, and they're talking about how they wish they could be together, but they clearly have been meeting up just kind of for secretive rendezvous. Mm-hmm. And Sam says that he's been having like money troubles because he's paying off debts from his father who has recently passed away. He had a marriage that ended where he has to pay alimony. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of going back and forth of saying that they want to be together, but it's not like respectable or something, like, which I thought was really weird. Because I'm like, how is it not respectable? He's single.
Right.
She's single. Like, it's not like an affair. It's just he doesn't have a lot of money. Right. That's it. He has some debt. So anyways.
I'm sure it's like, it has to do with like character in the 50s, not character in a movie, but like the character of a person.
Oh,
they're like, you can't be with someone who, has all that kind of baggage and doesn't have money or a way of,
isn't
living.
A respectable man.
Yeah.
But this is during the workday. It's on a Friday, so she has to go back to work. And clearly, like, they want to be together because one of them suggests, should we get married? Should we run away, kind of a thing. So there's a lot of tension between them and like wanting to be together, but not being able to. So anyways, Marion goes back to work, and she works at, what is it, a real estate kind of firm?
That's how I took it.
Yeah, it seems like it's a real estate firm, because when she gets back, which also, this was a funny part. So she gets back, she's kind of like an office assistant or a secretary or something like that. And she works with another woman and then alongside their boss. And when she gets back to the office, she has a headache, and her coworker, the other woman, says, oh, well, my doctor gave me some pills just before I got married. She's like, and my husband got so mad when he found out I took tranquilizers.
It's just like straight face, like,
she's like, you want one? It's the middle of the day, and she's like, you want to have a tranquilizer?
Just picture if someone did that today, and they're like, yeah, my husband was so angry that I took tranquilizer.
Or like, God, I have such a bad headache. It's really bothering me. You want a tranquilizer?
Yeah. Or like, it's either someone's just like, do you have tranquilizer or do you want tranquilizer? It doesn't even matter which way it is. It's like, oh my God.
I'm a little too coherent today. I'd like some drool coming out of it. Yeah. So anyways, Which I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, that was...
Which it was just a small scene. But anyway, so her boss comes in with a new client who is buying a large piece of property and I believe it's a wedding gift for his daughter who's getting married, and he's paying for it in cash. He has the cash with him on him. It's $40,000, and he hands it to her boss, and the boss says, "Oh, this is a lot of money. Like, I don't feel comfortable." So he tells Marion, "Take this to the bank right away, get it deposited, because I don't want this hanging around even for the night." And Marion tells him, like, "That's fine. I'm going to go do that, but I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to take the rest of the day off." So she leaves, and we see her back at her apartment packing. And we also find out that she lives with her mother and her sister. And her mother, I think, her mother and her sister were out of town, or like it was something where she was alone in the house and they were going to be out of town for the weekend.
Right.
And so Marion's packing, and we realize that she's going to take the money and
she's
run.
like packing to leave.
She's packing to leave and steal the money so that she can go be with Sam.
Which, by the way, too, they show her again in like a bra. So they do it feels like a good portion of the movie is literally with her without clothes.
Alfred Hitchcock, he did the whole peephole thing.
That's true. But so like she was wearing white, and then for the rest of the movie you'll see her only in a black bra, and that was his way of showing, like, you know, she was angelic prior to that. She was innocent
before this, and then after
she's stealing the money. Yeah.
Which I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she gets in her car and she starts to drive away after she's all packed, and she is driving down a street in Phoenix and is stopped at a light. And as people are crossing the crosswalk, her boss and the client walk past her, and like they clearly make eye contact with her, which freaks her out. And the whole time we have this very like intense, anxious, like jittery music playing. So it kind of gives the viewer this feeling of anxiety the whole time.
I mean, I definitely was feeling it.
I hated it. The music was so good for those moments, because it was so irritating.
He, I believe he originally didn't want to have it. He wasn't planning on having that music. And he saw the movie without the music. And then
doesn't give us
and then he watched it afterwards and he was like, never mind. Yes, we need this.
Yeah. But anyway, so she's clearly freaked out. She keeps driving, and we hear this kind of scenario that is playing out in her head, where we hear her boss and her other coworker talking back and forth, being like, "Well, where's the money? Where is she?" And so she's kind of playing out what this is going to look like come Monday when she doesn't show up for work and the money's not deposited. And which again, like, kind of heightens her anxiety. She keeps driving through the night and ends up pulling over to sleep, gets woken up by a cop on the side of the road. And so the cop knocks on her window to wake her up, and she's clearly super freaked out seeing a cop right there after she knows that she's just stolen the money. But at this time, it's Saturday morning. No one should know by now. So anyway, so she actually just starts to drive away. She turns on the car and goes to like pull away, and he's like, no, like roll down your window. They talk. He clearly sees that something's not right about her, because she's very defensive when she's talking to him, and she just doesn't want to stay there and chat. She's not friendly. She's just,
am I under arrest?
Yeah, she's asking all these questions like, do I look like I've done something? He's like, well, you're kind of acting like it. So anyway, she keeps driving. She pulls into a dealership, because she notices that she's gone from everyone having Arizona plates to now she's in California. So everyone has California plates. So she pulls into a dealership trying to trade out her car as quickly as possible. And of course, as she's at that dealership, the same cop drives by and pulls over on the side of the road, gets out, and he just watches her.
On the side of the street.
Yeah, on the side of the street. So
to which she keeps looking at him and like
she's acting so suspicious. Like the cop is absolutely like, this person is not. This person's up to something. And anyway, so
it's like she's never stolen $40,000 before.
Yeah,
and like, ran away from her job and her home, and I mean, come on.
God, so she's talking to the dealer. They're going back and forth. She wants to trade in her car. And she just picks a random one. Like, okay, I'll take that one. How much is it with my trade-in? And he's like, oh, well, that'll be about $700. And she's like, that's fine. I want it now? Like, I'll pay in cash. And then that clearly sends up red flags for the dealer. The dealer. And he's like, you don't want to haggle? He's like, are you running from someone? Do you have the correct papers for your car? So he's asking all these questions too. And she basically just tells him, like, I just want to go. Like, why do you have a problem with me paying in cash?
Right.
Get me out of here. So she gets in the new car, and before she drives away, they stop her because she left her fucking bags in her old car, which again sends up red flags for people. You have one
They're
bag.
Like, miss,
they have to stop
your
her.
Bag.
And at that point, the cop pulls into the dealership and starts kind of approaching the dealer as she's driving away.
There's some funny business here, see?
And so she plays out again kind of a scenario that she would see happening where the cop talks to the dealer and the dealer's like, something wasn't right about her. And so...
Well, what was wrong with her? She was a woman.
Well, she was a woman driving.
A woman, of course.
So she keeps driving. She's driving. Now it's nighttime and it starts to downpour.
Oh, by the way, which, like, just to go back, there are remarks in this movie about stuff like that with, like, women and...
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of sexist remarks because it's the 60s.
Here we are. So that's the same thing for us listening. We're like, okay, we have to take it within the context of what's happening.
It was so frustrating because the dealer made some kind of comment on, like, yeah, well, you know, you don't even want to, like, think about it, but I guess you're a woman, so you don't think about it. Kind of, whatever. So she's driving. It's starting to rain. It's starting to downpour to the point where she can't see. Basically, she can only see blurry headlights of other cars, so she has to pull over, and she pulls over into this motel, the Bates Meta. So she goes into the front office. No one's there. She looks over, and of course, this big kind of like
it's
ominous,
like a haunted house of haunted house.
It's a very like old, creepy Victorian style house up on the hill, and it's raining. She sees a shadow of a woman standing in one of the windows in the house. So she honks her horn to get their attention.
She's like, bitch.
Bitch.
But really, it was just normal honks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That would have helped. That would help to make the movie a lot better.
Update it a little bit.
Yeah.
She gets their attention, and out comes this kind of like skinny, gawky guy comes running down the stairs to help her. They go into the office, and she starts checking in. She writes down her name in the guest book, and I think she had her name under, like, was it Marion or Maria Samuels or something like that. So she's writing a fake name in there, and she's writing her name, and she's getting checked in, and they introduce themselves, and he tells her, I'm Norman Bates. You know, I live here with my mother. We're caretakers, and this place has kind of been running down because they moved the highway, and no one's ever here. We have 12 rooms all empty. So I'll give you room number 1 because it's closest.
I'd say during this too, like he's gawky and skinny, but he's also like charming in a way. Like he
doesn't act very creepy. He acts pretty warm, and which again, like, is something that I really liked his acting. I thought it was very good. And so he gives her key number 1, saying, like, it's right next to this office. So if you need anything, you can just literally tap on the wall. And she says, like, oh, well, the only thing I need is some sleep and some food. And he mentions that there's a diner just outside of Fairville, which is 15 miles away, which is where Sam is. And that's her destination point. So she's like, oh, I didn't know that I was that close. And he's like, yeah, but you're probably not going to drive in the rain. So, let me show you to your room and maybe I can get you some food. So he takes her to her room, shows her everything. And he tells her, like, I was going to eat some sandwiches. Why don't you come up to the house? We can eat together. And she takes him up on that offer. And so he's like, okay, I'll go get my umbrella. You settle in. I'll come back. I'll get you. So she's unpacking her stuff. He leaves. And she then hears an old woman's voice yelling at Norman. And the woman is insulting Marion, saying, like, oh, well, you guys are just you're going to sit up here and you're going to eat and then you're going to whisper to each other. And then you're like, you're going to have candles lit. And she's just like implying that it's just a very kind of dirty, seedy situation. And Norman just wants to kind of get her into bed, basically. And, Norman's yelling back, and eventually he storms out, comes back down, and comes to Marion with sandwiches and milk, and she apologizes because she's like, oh, I think I caused you some trouble. And he's like, well, it's just, my mother, she's just not feeling right, but why don't we have our sandwiches in the office and we can talk for a little bit. So she goes into the office and kind of his back room, and immediately you're hit with all of these taxidermied birds. And they're all birds of prey.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that was like one of their, well, I don't know, is a pheasant a bird of prey? Because a pheasant was in there.
They eat rodents?
Then, yeah, I guess.
I don't actually.
Well, then shut the hell up. I don't know. But we see ravens, we see owls, and there's like a big owl that's kind of like mid-flight, just hanging over his head the whole time. And we have, the uplighting we have all the shadows and displayed from the bird. So it's very creepy going in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a weird juxtaposition to his kind of warmth and welcoming that he's bringing her into.
Mm-hmm.
But so she starts eating and they get to talking, and she finds out that his mother is basically an invalid, and she was convinced by like a lover who left her to build this motel. His father passed away, so it's just him taking care of his mother, and they have clearly a very strained relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And Marion mentions like, well, don't you ever want to like get away? Don't you have friends, or don't you want to do something for yourself? And he explains like, no, I need to be here for mother. I'm the only thing that she has, and she's ill. So there's no one else to take care of her. And Marion suggests putting her somewhere.
Right.
And Norman gets really upset and is like, you are talking about an institution. He's like, have you ever seen the inside of those? Like people studying you and staring at you. And he just goes into it really hard.
Mm-hmm. More than the average person probably might know.
Yeah, exactly. So
mm-hmm. She should have just been like, no, I don't. Why do you?
Why do you know what the inside looks like? And clearly she's getting uncomfortable with his very triggered response.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he kind of dials it back. And he's like, but, I've thought about that myself too, putting her somewhere. And so while she kind of is ready to leave that situation with Norman, she actually also does come to realization, because he talks about like, I think everyone's in their own personal trap. And he's like, I was born in mine. And so there's kind of the sympathetic element that's added into the situation. And so Marion realizes that she's created a trap for herself by stealing this money. So she mentions to Norman, like, yeah, I have to wake up early tomorrow because I need to head back to Phoenix. She's like,
so she realizes
I've gotten myself into trouble, and I need to kind of get myself out.
Make it better and get,
Mm-hmm. And so then she, says thank you, and he goes, thank you, Norman. Goes,
which is so like, think of like saying that to someone today where they're like, thank you. No, thank you, Rob. And they're like, okay,
I would just say, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to go now. And then like,
but yeah, so he says, yeah, well, it was, such a pleasure talking to you. Good night, Mrs. And she goes, oh, Mrs. Crane. And she walks out, goes to her room. Norman checks the ledger and sees Samuel's written down. Yeah. So, and he just kind of has this like knowing smile, which like, if you didn't know the plot of the movie, I wouldn't even think that part was creepy, where he just kind of looks like, it would look to me more like an understanding, like, okay, But anyway, so
what do you mean, like, okay, like she's on the run?
Like, no, like she, she's gotten herself into trouble. It sounds like she's gonna write it. Good for you. Good for you.
Good for you.
So
hey, you know what? Good for you.
Good for you too.
No, good for you.
So she goes back to her room. He goes back to his office and closes the door after she leaves. And as soon as she's in her room kind of unpacking, he takes a picture off of his wall, and the wall is connected to her room. And of course, there's a peephole. And how the hell does she not see that peephole?
That's what I was looking for when we had extra shots. I was like, where is that hole? And then I don't know if they just like passed it off.
I don't think they ever really like show you where the hole is, because that is a huge hole.
It's a big ass hole. Like the reason why I was wondering too as well, because like when I saw the wall that they had shown, you can't see the hole, but the wallpaper is also very like complex at the same time. So maybe they're just saying like, it would be hard to find that hole in this very like detailed wallpaper.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how I'm like, okay, maybe I guess it would be harder to see.
I'm sure that's how they played it off, yeah.
And the hole is bigger on his side, as in like the drywall portion is completely gone, and then the hole on her side is a lot smaller.
I'm saying, like, if you were to look at a wall and there was a like marble-sized, like probably a little bit bigger than a marble-sized hole, that's not just like a little like little people. That's a big hole. That's like you could fit a whole eyeball in that hole.
But like I said, I think it's the wallpaper.
It's definitely the pattern of the wallpaper. But and then of course this is when we see that she's wearing the black underwear, and so he watches her for a little bit, puts the picture back. He goes to the house and she jumps in the shower. So, and I think before she jumps in the shower, she writes on a note where she basically tallies up how much money she spent, so then she knows how much she owes back, which we thought was funny because, like, for all we know, because this is Saturday, because she left Friday, slept that night, woke up, kept driving, went to buy a car, and then went to the motel. So that's all we know. Only spent $700, and so she had to write out. She specifically has to write it on a piece of paper. 40,000 minus 700. Okay, so I owe 700. And I get it. You know, with us with phones now, it's a lot easier to use our calculator. Oh, exactly. Yeah, so and maybe that was just. I think that's what. But obviously, it was. It's intentional because it's like a like if you take that out of the movie, that's a big portion of the movie, or that's a good plot point to progress throughout the movie. So it is important. But it's like her writing out the piece of paper and then ripping it up. Yeah, because so she writes it out. She writes it out and then she rips it up. And does she flush it down the toilet? She puts it. Yeah, because I was thinking that when we were watching, I was like, is she just going to put it in? Is it like put it in the garbage? And then someone's like, what? What are these? Put it together. And then, but instead, she puts it in the toilet and then flushes it. Yeah. Which, by the way, this movie is, I guess, known as the first movie to ever show a toilet. So that's pretty neat. But I mean, I guess you have to think about this in the context of, like, during this time, you weren't even allowed to show belly buttons, which this movie also showed a belly button. Belly buttons and toilets? Mm-hmm. Holy shit. So, like, obviously in the shower scene, you'll see her belly button, which I remember seeing that, what the fuck? Well, and, like, the knife kind of, like, points to the belly button. Yeah, it's, like, right here. And so, like, that's obviously, that had to be a big deal. But I remember listening to this other conversation about this movie where they were talking about how, like, there actually is, and I have it in the notes, but there actually is, like, a trailer for this movie, which is 6 minutes long. And he shows the toilet in it, which technically that would be the first time. But people don't seem to talk about that. And at the same time, isn't it just funny to think that people are like, oh, there's that thing. What? That thing that I see every day. The thing. Everybody poops. But never admit it. Don't you fucking admit it. No. Because it's unholy. Shameful. It's shameful. You should be ashamed for it to happen. Shameful, yes. Okay, so so she writes out her figure, and then the whole time she has had this money in her purse with her, like the $40,000 in cash, just stuffed in her purse. And what was it? Stuffed in her purse. In there. And so she takes it out, she wraps it in this newspaper that she had gotten, and just kind of puts the newspaper on her bedside table. Yep. So she's trying to basically hide it in plain sight. And anyway, so she jumps into the shower, and then we have our infamous shower scene. The scene of scenes happens. We all know it. Yep. So we have someone, and from the viewer's perspective, as of right now, this looks like an old woman. So we're led to believe that this is Norman Bates' mom. It's an old crusty bitch. Old crusty Bates. And and we see this person rip the shower curtain aside, or I guess pull the shower curtain aside, and this is where we have the the knife. She has a knife above her, and we see the stabbing motions and Marion screaming, and then this is where we see, like, the belly button. The belly button. And oh my god! When I saw that belly button, I screamed. You had to take a cold shower. Yeah. I was like, "You see that?" Oh my god. And so they can show that? Whoa. So with that scene too, because we see, like, the blood, and this is all in black and white. That's like running down the shower drain. Yep. So he specifically wanted it to be in black and white, so then he can get past all of the censors. So because it would be too gory if it was in color. And if you couldn't even show a toilet.
Yeah, exactly. But the main reason that he wanted to make the movie as inexpensively as possible, or that is a reason, because the budget that he had was so minimal. It was under $1 million.
So he had a tiny budget and he wanted to
get what he could with it. He also wondered if so many bad, inexpensively made black and white B movies did so well in the box office, what would happen if a really good, inexpensively made black and white movie was made. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of like his mindset going into this movie. And some of the things with the shower scene too was, like I said before, Janet was wearing moleskin patches over her private part. Janet is the actress. Yeah. Over her private parts when she acted out the shower scene, and she didn't want to be nude. And the camera,
I wouldn't want to be nude around him either.
I know. And the camera would not pick up anything supposedly obscene. And so, but after the warm water of the shower washed off the moleskin, that's when Hitchcock wanted to do one more take, and that was the take that was used. So because of that scene as well, or I should say the scene also, they used chocolate syrup, infamously, for the blood, just because it would show up better on the camera. And not just that scene, but the other scene that we'll see inside the house too, where there's just a little bit of blood on the detective's face. You'll see that too, which is kind of nice it's funny to know, but it worked. I mean, it was dark, and it's like what I would assume would be blood.
I wonder if they had an ice cream party on set.
They would all be like, "Oh no, disgusting!" And then they'd have nightmares for months and months. The knife of the sound, penetrating the flesh that they used, was actually a melon. There's just a sound of a melon, which I was taking note of, what it sounded like too, and it did sound kind of fleshy in a way. So I think that was a cool direction they went. And then the same thing with that same actress. After this movie was made, she always took baths until the end of her life.
Oh.
So after seeing the shower scene on film, she remarked that it made her realize how vulnerable a woman was in a shower. And that's how
are you not vulnerable in a tub too? I get the shower curtain, but
I don't know. I think it's just the fact that she's on her back and she can see everything that's coming.
Yeah, but then you have to stand up, hope to God you don't slip.
And she's taking a bath, but she's not naked. She's wearing, the full clothes and stuff. Being as proper as you can. But yeah, I think that's what I got for that shower scene. So she gets stabbed by what looked like an old woman, to which she kind of just collapses, falls to the floor. And
the old woman walks out, and Marion slumps over, and I think it just focuses in on her eye as it kind of flashes from her eye to the draining shower, seeing the blood drain down with the water. And then we cut to the house on top of the hill, and we hear Norman screaming, yelling, "Oh God, mother, the blood, the blood!" And then he runs out of the house, runs down to Marion's room and sees her. And of course is freaked out, super scared, but he realizes he has to do something. So he pulls off the shower curtain fully and wraps her up in it. And he kind of takes her out of the bathroom and sets her in the bedroom, starts to clean up the blood with a fucking mop.
He just uses a mop and bucket.
It's the worst. It's the worst. Anyways, so he starts to clean it up, grabs her stuff, puts her in the trunk of her car. And does he end up grabbing the money?
Yeah, he takes the newspaper, but he doesn't know there's money in it.
Okay, yeah. Because there's he runs out, and then I think he comes back to grab the newspaper.
He runs out, and the last thing he grabs is the newspaper, because it's the last thing in the room.
And he just tosses it in. And then he drives the car a little down the property to this boggy area with kind of this swamp
it's just like a swamp.
Yeah. He puts the car in neutral and kind of pushes it into the bog, and it's rolling down this hill, goes in, starts to sink a little bit, and he's just watching it, and then it kind of stops for a second. Which, why you wouldn't, because you can't get that car out. If you push that in, you need to know the depth of this bog, and he's just hoping that it sinks in.
because there's a shot of him just sitting or standing there with his hand kind of to his mouth, where he's like, all right, come on, please, and yeah, like you said, like it stops.
There's like a flash of panic on his face.
Because it stops and it doesn't fully submerge, and then it does fully submerge.
Yeah, and then it finally sits down, and so he has this little grin on his face.
Yeah, like we were talking about how, I mean, it's a bog. It's not like the ocean. Like that bog is going to go up and down in terms of the amount of water that's in there, and it's California too. So I mean, come on. So like, yeah, sure, I guess he's fine right then and there, but literally within half a year or not even that long, that water could be gone, and then you just have a car chilling there.
Stupid.
That's stupid.
So now it's 1 week later, and we see Sam in his like office in the back of a hardware store writing a letter to Marion, and I think is telling her that he wants to get married. Like he's changed his mind. He wants to be with her fully. And then all of a sudden we have Marion's sister kind of barge in the hardware store looking for Sam, and she confronts him and is like, we haven't heard from Marion. Her boss is worried. She left with $40,000 and I don't know where she is. You need to tell me if she's here. And he tells her, of course, no, she's not here. And then we have a private investigator come in too. And he was hired by the client at the real estate firm. And because this guy, he wants his fucking money back. And they figure if they find her, they can reason with her and they can get the money back without any police involvement. Right. So I feel like this guy's also into some shady shit.
Probably.
So they're all questioning Sam. He doesn't know where she is. And so they decide to kind of look around the area to where like someone might stay, because she's not in Phoenix. Her boss saw her in her car on her way out of town,
which I thought was stupid.
Yeah,
she's leaving, and this is in the beginning of the movie. The one person who she doesn't want heard or want to be seen by. Yeah. He just happens to be walking across the street where she's like waiting at the red light, and he happens to look at directly at her, and they have like a whole
yeah. So their best bet is to
in Phoenix. In a big old city.
Yes, in Phoenix, he saw her.
Yep.
So these three, their best bet, they figure, is to go around areas that are like motels, hotels, wherever a person can stay, because they think that she was on her way to meet Sam with the money since he was in debt. That's the reason they couldn't be together.
Yep.
All that stuff. So we have a transition of them going through all these places, looking for her, and then we see the private investigator roll up on the Bates Motel. And this is like one of the last places I would assume they're looking. So they go in, I think he sees some like woman's shadow in the house too.
I think so.
And so he sees that. And so he goes into the office for the motel, and he's talking to Norman, and Norman like, it seems pretty like fine and chill, and he kind of tells him like, oh, you know what, no one's really been here for weeks, we're on the main highway and then they moved it, so we're kind of a slow motel at this point. But I like to keep up the place. I change the sheets and clean the rooms, even if no one stays in it. Like I still keep up those little old habits. And the private investigator asks, okay, I understand, but could I just see your guest book? I just want to be sure. And Norman kind of tells him like, I don't think so, but fine, that's okay, sure. So he shows him the guest book, and he sees that Marion has been there a week ago. And this kind of obviously contradicts his story. And then Norman also says, oh, well, a couple was here too, and they had mentioned like, they wouldn't have seen this place if I didn't turn on the light. So there are inconsistencies in Norman's
This has to
stories.
be like the easiest case for this detective too. He's like, oh my God,
he's fucking idiot.
He's like feeding me all this info when he's not trying. He doesn't want to, but he is.
Why wouldn't, I feel like if I was Norman, I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, there was a woman who stayed here, but she left early in the morning. She was clearly like on her way to do something or to meet someone. We didn't really stay in chat. It seems like she was on the run. Because he had all of that information. Yep. Anyways, so the private investigator presses Norman a little bit more and shows a picture of Marion to him. And he goes, oh, you know what? Yeah, I did see her. She was here, and we did have dinner together, and we did talk, and she was the only person here that night.
He doesn't. Yeah, it's not looking good for.
It's not, and then of course he starts to stutter too. So it's very clear to this private investigator that Norman's lying. He's trying to conceal something, and Norman tells him basically at the end, she didn't state she left super early in the morning. She said she was going back to Phoenix. So that's kind of all the information I have. And then the private investigator asked, well, did anyone else see her? Like, you just here alone by yourself? And he's like, yeah, no one, just me. And he's like, well, who was that up in the house? I saw a woman. And Norman then says, well, Mother was here, but she didn't really
another person.
She didn't really like her or something. Or he mentioned something about how his mother, either saw her or made a comment about Marion, which again, the private investigator is like, okay, well, then I need to talk to your mother because another person saw her, so I need to question them. He's like, oh, but she's an invalid. Yeah. So no.
He's like, doesn't count as a person.
Yeah,
so.
She's not even a person. It's like living by myself, the person who never leaves the house. Yeah. So then the private investigator kind of leaves Norman, calls up Sam, and he's like, something doesn't feel right here. It's really fishy. I'm going to try and question, I think I'm going to come back, try and question the mother and see what I can get because I didn't get much from Norman.
Well, he got a lot, but he didn't get much in the substantial.
He didn't get something substantial because
he picked up on certain things too. On for one, the inconsistency is that he
Norman's not willingly giving information.
Yeah, he's just catching him. He's tripping the whole time. And he also sees specifically he finds out a room, as in room number 1, which is where she stayed. Mm-hmm. He goes, I think he just goes on a hunch that that's the room that she stayed in, unless he specifically he looked at the thing. Yep. So he was able to compare her actual signature with what was on the ledger. He
compares the signature. Norman confirms that he has seen her. Yep. He knows that she stayed in cabin 1. He gives all of this information to Sam and her sister. Yep. So the detective comes back to the motel and Norman's not there.
He's not in the office.
He's not in the office.
He's not in any of the rooms.
Yeah, he doesn't see him. So he goes...
which, by the way, he comes up and he gets, instead of getting out of the front seat, he decides to climb through the passenger seat.
He climbs through the passenger seat, which is such a weird way to exit a car. When there's no other obstacles blocking your end.
I mean, I think it just had to do with the limitations of the set, and that's why he got out of it that way. But we were just thinking how funny it would be just now where we go somewhere and you're driving and then we're like, all right, let's go. And they're like, yeah, get out.
I look like a fucking idiot when I try and climb over a seat. I do not do it gracefully.
I look like a fucking idiot just climbing into my car.
Yeah. Anyway, so the investigator comes back and he, and his name's Arbogast.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arbogast. And he goes up to the house and he just opens the door and walks right in. And...
he doesn't say anything either. He doesn't
announce himself. He doesn't say, anybody here?
Detective Arborist.
Gast.
Arbogast. He's an arborist.
The arborist.
Your friendly arborist.
So he starts walking up the stairs. He just goes right in and kind of looks around, starts walking up the stairs. And then we see one of the bedroom doors slowly open. And then
that
all
other
of a sudden,
famous shot ensues.
And we see again, it's kind of shadowed out for us, but we see the female figure with the knife kind of and going go towards Arbogast as Arbogast is going up the stairs and attack him. And we see the
blood on his head.
He's chocolate syrup.
The syrup and he's flying down the stairs.
Is so hilarious. What? It does not, because it looks like they're just kind of slowly lowering him.
And the only shot they show him is to actually slip on his foot actually just falls off the last stair on the staircase and then he lands on his back. That shot is very Vertigo-ish. It's very Hitchcock. Maybe that's a ism is the falling, because you have that I'm thinking of Vertigo. So
yeah.
But just that specific shot. I actually think that was a really cool shot. Because the progression of it was very slow and quiet, and he gets to the top of the stairs, and that's just something that I would assume at that time, even then when we were watching, I forgot about that scene, and it would seem really abrupt. As soon as she walks out of that room and goes straight up to him and just stabs him, and you're like, oh my God, okay. But it's that overhead shot where you're looking at it as if you're like a spider on the wall, and you're looking down to what's happening. I thought that was actually a really cool shot. Yeah. I think there's a decent amount of shots in this movie that are actually really, really neat.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's one of them.
So he's attacked, and then we're taken to the hardware store. It looks like it's the middle of the night, basically. Yep. And Lila, who is Marion's sister, and Sam have been waiting for Arbogast. And his first phone call that one of his phone calls that Arbogast last called them, he had said, I'm going to try and talk to the mother. It'll only take at most an hour or less. So he's like, I'll be back, or I'll call you within this time frame. And we find out they've been waiting for like over 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And Lila realizes something's not right. She starts to panic and tells Sam, like, we have to go after him. So, like, clearly there's something going on with this place and these people. We have to go and try and find him. Like, he's either in trouble or something happened. And Sam tries to, like, talk her down, being like, well, no, I'm sure he's just following up a lead, or, he found something that he had to go
He's very busy,
Yeah, he's a man,
He's a man, He's got things to do.
He's got a penis. And so, and then again, she kind of tells him, like, he has called us when he's found nothing. She's like, he would call us if he found something.
I thought that was a cool point.
Yeah, I did too. So eventually she convinces Sam that one of them needs to go kind of check this place out. So Sam goes to the motel, and there's again no one there at like the office or in the rooms, and he doesn't see Arbogast's car, and so he starts to yell for the private investigator. He yells his name, and then we're taken to Norman, and he's standing in front of that bog area, just kind of looking over it, which leads the viewer to believe that that's where Arbogast is now. So now you can fit two cars. Now you got two
big ass cars in there.
And he hears kind of the echo of Sam's yell. Mm-hmm. And then we have Sam not finding Arbogast. He returns to the hardware store, and he sees that, or he tells Lila that no one was there. He couldn't find Bates. He couldn't find Arbogast. And whoever was in the house, whether if that was the old woman or not, no one opened the door for him. Right. So they go to see the sheriff of the town. And again, this is like, it looks like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night or something like that. So they wake up the sheriff, and they're talking to him, trying to explain, like, something's not right. Like, we're trying to find a missing person, and now we have another missing person going on. So we need your help. You need to, like, kind of intervene. And the sheriff is like, no, that's Norman. Like, it's totally fine. I'm sure your detective just went off on a lead. And they're like, no one was there. Like, the mother didn't even answer, or like there was a woman there, she didn't even answer. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, it didn't, like, yeah. And I think the sheriff's wife is like, did Norman take a what? Yeah. Like, super excited. So anyways, they convince the sheriff to call. And we just hear the sheriff's talking. We don't hear both ends of the conversation. So Norman picks up, and he apparently tells the sheriff, like, that Arbogast came there, talked to him, didn't find anything, took off. So sheriff hangs up, and he's like, well, there you go, It's
like everything you would expect him, how Bates would explain things.
Mm-hmm. And then Sam kind of reminds him, like, well, what the mother, he went to go talk to the mother. What did he say about his mother? And the sheriff tells him, like, well, the mother's dead. She's been dead for years.
She's dead over 100 years.
Over 100 years. And
I was just 2 then.
Anyways, so, and then we come to find out the story, kind of the history behind Norman's mother, and the sheriff tells him, like, oh, well, it was this terrible kind of murder-suicide. She had a lover, and then she found out that her lover was married with another woman, and so she poisoned him, and she killed herself, and poor Norman found them both, like, dead. In their bed. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. And so clearly, like, for Sam and Lila, they're like, okay, something's not adding up, because Arbogast was insistent that he saw the mother, and Norman kind of confirmed that there was a mother. Then we're taken back to Norman, and he's in his house, and the camera's kind of in the hallway, and so we just hear these voices arguing between each other. We hear Norman and the voice of his mother, and Norman's spooked that all of these, he just got a call from the sheriff and there was a private investigator and, the woman was murdered. So he's like, you have to leave this room. You have to go back or you have to go into the basement. You'll be safe there. So we have to hide you. And the mother's protesting and it's kind of going back and forth. And then we are again taken to kind of that overhead shot of we see Norman carrying this woman's body out from the bedroom down the
This
stairs.
woman's body? You mean just the woman?
The woman.
Because when you say the body, it implies sometimes that it just implies that someone's dead.
Years ago?
Yeah.
Like the sheriff implied it by saying it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But clearly you could hear her talking, so she must be fine.
So she's fine. But anyway, so we see him take her body downstairs. And then cuts to the next morning. Sam and Lila have come up with a plan that they're going to go to the Bates Motel. They're going to pose as husband and wife. They're going to get a room and they're going to basically try and figure out what happened and try and snoop around and see what they can come up with. So they go in, they see Norman, they kind of go to check into a room and Sam tells Norman kind of very strategically saying like, well, this is a business trip, so I have to make sure I have all of the receipts and everything's kind of done by the book so I can show my boss, all the expenses. And because Norman originally was like, oh, you don't need to sign our guest book or our ledger. That's totally fine. It's, I kind of gave that up years ago. And he's like, no, I need to. So he signs in basically like making sure that someone knows that they have been there, but also seeing that like, Arbogast was right. This is her handwriting. So he signs in and then he clearly Norman is acting off and there are certain things that he's not doing right. He's off his game because there are certain procedures that he doesn't do as far as like checking guests in. And Norman puts them at the very last room on this like motel strip.
And the way that he approached him too was very much just like, we'd like a room. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Instead of like, how he normally, how he normally is.
How he welcomed Marion. Yeah. He grabs like key number 12 or something and Lila grabs the key and she's like, oh, you finish up here. I'll head to the room. And so she checks to see that door, the door
unlocked.
Yeah. For room number 1 is unlocked. So she quick checks that and then the guys come out and they go to their room. So Norman leaves them and they, after a little bit of kind of conferring with each other, they're like, okay, we're going to head out. We're going to if he catches us, we're just going to say we're just taking a walk just to get some air. Let's go. So they kind of check around. They look into the office. Norman's not there. And so they go into room number 1 and they're looking around and then they see a little piece of paper in the bathroom by the toilet that didn't get flushed. And Norman didn't mop up.
Yeah, exactly.
So they then can see clearly someone was subtracting or adding a number to 40,000.
Based on however many little pieces that they had. There's a 4 and a 0. 40,000. I know exactly what she does this all the time.
That bitch can't count.
She can't count.
So they realize that again, everything that Arbogast had said is confirming everything Arbogast said has now been confirmed by the ledger, by the note found in room number 1. So now that they have that confirmed, Lila wants to talk to Norman's mother. She's like, okay, no one's been able to talk to her. We just need to go up there and kind of confront her. And she goes up there and Sam goes to find Norman in the office and because Norman's back in the office. So Sam goes in there, sees him, and he's like, oh, well, the wife's trying to take a nap. So I thought we'd just talk. So he's trying to distract Norman.
He's obviously distracting him.
As Lila goes upstairs to the house and she goes into the mother's bedroom and it's decked out with Victorian shit. It's so gaudy. It's crazy.
He's like, how can someone live in this?
Oh, God. I would get a headache just looking at that room. But anyways, she sees this indented form of a person that's almost it looks like they'd been in the fetal position for over 100 years, but in the bed. So she knows someone or something has been there. And at this point, we're taken back to Sam, and he is pressing Norman and getting more confrontational with him, talking about well, you probably wanted to get out of this. You probably wanted to sell this place, get away from your mother, and what would it take? $40,000
exactly.
Exactly. And so Sam, Norman's trying to basically get away from him, and Sam tries to stop him, but Norman knocks him out, and Sam falls to the floor.
Yep.
So Sam's knocked out. Goodbye, Sam.
Goodbye, Sam.
Goodbye, Sam. And Lila's coming down the stairs when she sees Norman is running up to the house.
Yep.
And so she tries to hide from him. And of course, where does she go? She goes to the cellar.
Which he decides not to go to right away. Is what something like we notice. We're just like, why wouldn't he go to the basement?
It was like him
knowing
being
what's in the
so
basement.
Protective of his mother. You're surprised that that's not the first place he goes.
Right.
But so she goes down to the basement, and we see this person from the back, and it looks like, again, old woman hair. That's the silhouette that we've been seeing the whole time, and it's sitting in a chair, and she spins the chair around, thinking that it's the mother, and then we have this decrepit old mummified body.
It's like the groundhog from like that one really quick clip on YouTube.
Exactly. So it's, of course, like she screams, and then she tries to like run up the stairs, and we see Norman come.
You hear footsteps running down, and then you have Norman.
You have Norman meeting her. Stormin' Norman at the stairs with this crazed look on his face. Right. He has a wig on. He has a little moo-moo on with the knife.
Which is the reveal. You're like, oh my God.
Which now you officially know it's been Norman this whole time. And so he goes, like, he's looking to attack Lila. And then, of course, Sam comes up from behind him, and he, like, takes the knife.
All he does is he just holds onto his wrist. And
he whispers in his ear, he goes, I love you. Yeah.
But, like, we notice how, like, funny Norman's face looked in it.
Norman's is like,
he's like, ah! If you watch the movie, just pay attention to that, because he's such a weird face he makes.
Take a picture of it and put it as your home screen on your phone.
Pause it, take a picture, and then post it in our comments, just so we know that you watched the show.
And then say,
or listen to the show. Yeah, and then only say, I love you, love you, love you.
Anyway, so Sam basically fights Norman down to the ground, and this is kind of when the most suspenseful moments are over. The audience can breathe again. And so that then we're kind of coming to a close, and we have Lila, Sam, and the sheriff are all kind of in like either the sheriff's office or like kind of like a courtroom, or like they're somewhere within like a police station or something, and they're all conferring with each other, talking about what had happened. And they realize that Norman's been the one killing everyone, at like, the investigator, Marion, and there were also 2 other missing women who were in the area that they are now attributing to Norman. They also figure out that Norman had been the one to kill his mother and his mother's lover, because he was jealous, and he then projected that jealousy to his mother's persona that he takes on. And we also have a psychiatrist that comes in and kind of explains all of
gives
this. Us all of this kind of inside information, and explains to everyone that that's why he was killing women that he found attractive, because in his mind, like his kind of split personalities, Norman found them attractive, and Norman's take on his mother, so Norman's mother's personality within him, got jealous of like the other half of Norman being attracted to these women, which is why he had to end up killing them. And it's really funny, because they ask like, so Norman killed my sister? And he goes, yes. And no.
Which I'd be so pissed. I'd be like,
yeah, he fucking killed
yes
them.
or no?
Yeah.
Which he does go back and they're like, she's like, but so she dead? Well, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, she is. Dead. Yeah, Norman did kill her, but he's
and
crazy.
You're waiting for the and no, and he's like, no.
Oh,
she is deader than a door.
I wanted to slap that sister.
I know.
Yes. And no. He's talking to the sister and basically the boyfriend of this woman who's been murdered. And whatever, what a dick. Anyways. So they're kind of wrapping up, and we're then taken outside or into the separate room where Norman's sitting, and he has just this like creepy grin on his face, kind of head tilted down, but eyes looking up.
Very
at the
iconic
camera.
shot.
And we hear, is it Norman's mother's voice in his head? Or
yes.
Okay, so it's Norman's mother's voice. And basically it's just, we find out that Norman has completely broken, and he is now just basically assume the identity of his mother, pretty much. So we hear her voice in his head, and she's basically saying like, well, I'm not going to do anything now. Like, I'll show them. I'm innocent. I'm a sweet old woman. And we see a fly crawling on Norman's hand, and she's like, see, there's a fly on me, and I won't even touch this fly, because when they look at me, I want them to think, well, she's so sweet, she wouldn't even hurt a fly. Which we had a fly on the TV the night before. Yeah, I wanted to murder. Yeah.
Kill it now.
Anyway, so that is the movie. That is the movie.
It is a very famous movie. It did very well in the box office.
How well, Rob?
Well, Paramount Pictures, they gave Hitchcock like a super small budget, like I said. Less than $1 million. It was about $800,000. And I think it ended up grossing $32 million in the 60s.
Jesus.
And so much that before that happened, they had such a distaste for the material that they were thinking the movie would fail.
Like the horror genre?
Yeah, essentially. This is his first horror movie that he made, too. I didn't know that. Yeah. So they thought it was going to fail, so they deferred most of the box office take to Hitchcock, to which he made a fortune.
Jesus Christ.
So it worked out for him. Which, I mean, if you had that kind of contract,
that little.
Exactly. And you had that kind of contract where they're like, I won't do that well. And he's like, motherfucker.
It was, bitch.
I'm Alfred.
I'm a douche. No.
But yeah, so that is Psycho.
Do we have any other trivia that we missed?
I don't think so. Besides, I mean, there's one small one. Vera Miles, who was Marin's sister. Lily.
Lila.
Lila wore a wig for that role. Her hair was actually a wig.
Does she have dark brown hair?
I'm not sure. She had to shave her head for her role in 5 branded women.
Well, that's why.
In the same year. Okay. So she had to wear a wig.
Okay. It looked good.
It actually looked pretty good. But with that said, let's go into the reviews, where the majority of the views, I'm assuming, are pretty high. Is that
I would assume this is a highly.
What would you think our age group would rate this movie? Where would you
I would say like an 8.2.
Pretty close. Men is 8.6, women 8.5.
Yeah.
Review number 1, The Perkins Factor, 10 out of 10.
God, I love Perkins.
No matter how many times one sits through this Hitchcock classic, Anthony Perkins always manages to surprise you. It is a sensational performance for which he didn't even get an Oscar nomination. I have no way of knowing how much preparation he dedicated to the creation of Norman Bates. Maybe no more than usual, but the details of his performance are astonishing. Never a false move. If you follow the film looking into his eyes, you'll be amazed as I was. The madness and tenderness, the danger and cravings. A mama's boy with hellish implications, and yet we feel connected to the human being. We are not horrified by him, but of his circumstances. In short, we kind of understand him. That alone puts him miles and miles away from the cinematic monsters. From Richard Attenborough as the real-life Christine in 10 Rintintin Place, to the hideous, unredeemable Christian Bale in the American Psycho. Here, Hitchcock and Herman create a universe that Anthony Perkins inhabits with the same kind of electricity, nerve, and shyness that Norman Bates projects throughout the film. Janet Leigh falls for it, if not him. She, like us, sees the boy trying to escape this dutiful son's trap. He is in my list of the 10 most riveting characters ever to be captured on film. That's more about just him, not the movie.
Yeah, that's not a review of the movie. That's his performance, which I thought his performance was great.
Yeah,
and I think it holds up very well. Yep. So I agree with a lot of that, but again, it's not really a review.
What did we get out of that? This is also, I will note again, the first review is usually, if not always, the most helpful, rated the most helpful.
The top to review of review.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not bullshit to me. Review number 2, very boring, 4 out of 10. This movie is so bad that I almost wouldn't have thought that I watched the wrong movie if it hadn't been for the opening credits. Are all these positive reviews fake? Has no one that has seen this movie also seen a good horror movie?
I bet you they think like Saw 6 is
Slender
really good.
Man. They love Slender Man. Are people really that easily manipulated? I don't know. I'm just going to try to avoid any spoilers in my review of this mess. And people
spoilers. This movie, okay.
As people don't seem to care about it. But honestly, there is so little to this movie. There isn't really anything to spoil.
Oh my God.
What the hell?
So, what? Fuck. Okay.
I love that too. They're just like, I'm not going to give away any spoilers like everyone else on this 80-year-old movie at this point. 60. Who the fuck cares?
And then it's not that this movie is so old, but it's also, this movie is iconic.
Yes.
This is not like some random movie that was done that's no one's ever heard or seen.
Right.
This is an iconic movie that has like been like inspiration for a lot of other shits. And there's so many, like, even like Family Guy, I'm sure references this shit.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Right. So there have been like shows. They're like, they keep on bringing this back because it's so whatever.
Yeah. The first hour of this film is extremely boring.
Oh my God. How long is this film? Isn't it like, it's gonna be like an hour and 20 minutes or something?
No, I think it's longer than that.
Think so?
There was a lot to this movie, actually. Now, the more that I thought about it, like when we were going through it just now, it made me realize like there is a lot to this movie.
It didn't seem that long to me.
Everything is dragged out to pad the runtime. The entire opening scene doesn't even have anything to do with anything that happens after.
It is almost 2 hours. It's an hour and 49 minutes.
Towards the middle of the movie, there is a scene in a shower that is so poorly edited and acted that it left me laughing hysterically.
Yeah, that scene doesn't hold up. But again, like you said, like this was the first movie that showed a fucking toilet. They're not going to show someone being stabbed.
I mean, if you like really think about it too, like every time you see the knife like stab, they cut. So they'll cut.
You just see a swing.
It's kind of funny the way that it's like
you just
cut,
see a swing
cut.
down, and then you see her screaming.
Right.
There's no like the only contact that the knife has is it lays flat on her
belly,
stomach for a second. It's not even pointed at her.
Right.
It's laying flat against it. So like, yeah, I get that that's not a very riveting scene from today's perspective. But you also have to, if you're watching a movie like this, I think you also have to kind of give some leniency to the time that it was created.
There's something to say when you're watching something and they do something for the first time and you've never seen before and you're like, oh my God.
I use that thing.
Yeah. I use a knife exactly the same way.
I was talking about a turtle.
Oh. I don't use that. I'm pretty sure the scene was supposed to be scary, but honestly, I can't see anyone being on the edge of their seat from a performance like that.
The actress herself, who was in it, was like, I can't shower anymore.
She was horrified. She was in it. She knew it wasn't real. Yeah. After that scene, the detective character shows up, and he is kind of interesting, but he dies after less than 10 minutes, so it's kind of pointless.
I did like that. I thought he was
cool.
Yeah, I thought he was a good character.
The movie remains mildly entertaining after that, but it's not amazing or anything. The main thing that makes me hate this movie is the closing scene. The truth about the villain is revealed in an exposition dump that lasts like 5 to 10 minutes.
That was like, okay, whatever. It wasn't, whatever. I mean, maybe it's just because I've, seen this movie before and I know the plot and the twist,
right.
But that doesn't seem like they're all of a sudden like revealing like, oh my God, that's what was happening. God. I feel like once you see him in his mother's dress and the body, you can kind of put two and two together.
We're also dealing with a time that weren't serial killers in real life. There weren't like things like that in real life. So I'm sure they felt like they had to explain how.
Well, yeah, that psychology. I'm sure you had to like piece it together. But nowadays, like it's not. You don't have to jump that far.
Right. You're like, there's multiple things that
makes a lot of sense to me.
That's wrong with this person. And actually, let me tell you what it could be. Back then, they'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, they basically just accuse him of wanting to dress in women's clothing in the movie.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of the extent.
It's a transvestite.
Yeah, that's like the extent of their psychological understanding of human beings.
Yep. The reason why I don't like it is because it could have been a very interesting plot point that could have been developed over the course of the movie, but is instead just relegated to a plot twist. If we had spent the movie following a villain like that, it wouldn't have been really interesting, or maybe even scary. You could say that they didn't do this because they were focusing on the victims, but this movie has no character development. I'm going to say this again, but this movie has no character development.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I would just love to like ask them, like, what is character development to you?
I would have liked more information on the background relation or the like relationship that Norman had with his mother.
Sure.
I do think like they kind of glazed over that a little bit when they were talking with the sheriff. And they're just like, well, oh yeah, like Norman found them in bed together. And like, that was kind of a lot for like, you know, and then the psychologist kind of explains a little bit more, but I would
want to know more about this town that knows about all of this too. Like all of the different people like that sheriff and stuff too. Like because it just seems like a small town. So everyone kind of knows
everything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that like, I was more interested in that. And it's like, okay, so why did he have such a break? Like I get that they had said he had this weird kind of complex where he was jealous of his mother and that's how it projected into his buildup of her personality within him. But I want to know kind of like what led to that. Like, so that part interests me. So I could kind of see how someone would maybe argue that, but not to this degree.
Yeah, he says,
you're a butthead.
No one grows over the course of the movie and you don't learn about the personalities or backstories of pretty much anyone. I mean, I think we know enough.
You know enough for the story to be interesting and to care about the characters. You don't need all of Sam's story and to know like why his dad had all these debts or why his first marriage failed or anything like that. Like you don't really need to know all of that about each individual character. The biggest one is Norman, and that's where you get the most information.
Mm-hmm.
So go fuck yourself.
You could say that. Overall, this is a really boring, pointless, and meandering movie with a wasted concept. The only reason why anyone is praising this is because people like Alfred Hitchcock.
I don't.
Or they're just easily scared. I don't know. I really don't recommend watching this one.
Oh my god!
Well, if you didn't like that,
what a piece of trash.
You're really gonna like this one. Review number 3. Psycho, the most overrated horror movie ever. No, suspense movie of all time.
Oh my god.
Well, what can I say about this film? It's merely okay.
In the black, you said nothing in the name of the review.
What can I say about this film? 4 out of 10. It's merely okay, and the black and white makes the film seem completely dull and frankly quite boring.
Oh my god.
I don't understand what all this talk about the color being artistic, but I found it repulsive. The acting in this movie was very mediocre, especially from the stiff John Gavin, the ever so proper Vera Miles, and the so serious Martin Balsam.
I'm trying to look up.
Or Balsam.
Who was who? Yeah, I didn't. So John Gavin was Sam. He was probably my least favorite character.
He's very
he didn't seem very complex to me. Where it's like I think the private investigator, Norman, Marion, Lila, they all seemed like deeper characters. Where I feel like Sam was just like, I'm a man in the 60s, and darling, don't you worry. Like it wasn't until he.
Well, I mean, he was in money issues. He had a marriage
I understand.
prior that he's paying
I'm not saying like the elements that they put in, but his acting didn't really.
Okay, so it's the acting.
Yeah.
Okay. Try watching the new Psycho.
Oh my god!
And you'll find that these characters can actually have personalities.
I hated that.
I mean, that's gonna be on our list too.
I know,
but
yeah.
For everyone to know, that's gonna be like on the we have to go through all of the other Psychos first in order to hit this.
When we hit a movie with either remakes or sequels, we have to hit the original first.
Yep.
go in sequence, and then go with the remake.
Otherwise, with the Spooky Spinner, we're going to be watching like Psycho 4 right after this.
Boo.
And we don't want that. As for Janet Leigh, well, she was good, but Anne Hesh seemed more innocent, more human, and more sympathetic. As for Anthony Perkins, he's also so monotone, barely any emotion, and I struggle to understand why people rave over his dry performance.
Oh my god! Oh
god! He was so dry, you know?
Oh, wow. Okay.
I wish they had a comparison. They're like, I wish.
Yeah, I want to know what they think is like a top notch. Well, I mean, Vince Vaughn. Clearly, because they're fuck you.
As for the mother twist, well, that was good, but there are twists in about every horror film nowadays, and they're usually more entertaining than this joke.
Oh my god! Again, it's okay.
This is why it's important to think about everything in context.
Exactly. This person is comparing movies nowadays, even with the color aspect of it.
Yep.
Whereas, like, well, I wasn't visually stimulated because there was only 2 colors, so.
And then there's the shower scene in which everyone says is so scary. Where have they been? I could pick out a dream sequence from any Nightmare on Elm Street sequel that was done more creatively and powerfully.
Oh my god!
Picture like watching a Nightmare on Elm Street, and then you just get done with him going like, "Bitch," and then you go, "Wow, that was powerful." I get to see this person like sitting in front of it, staring at the TV, and then someone just like gets gutted, and then he's like, "Bitch." Wow, did you see that?
Yeah, it's like one of those people who like loves like the really cheesy, stupid, like overly dramatic horror movie, and they're like, "This is the shit." Like, this is, I want to be a scream, and I'm, fuck you.
This is my life.
I love horror movies.
That's me. It was a simple knifing in the shower. A simple knifing.
Imagine going to court and being like, Your Honor, it was just a simple knifing.
By my client. He didn't know what he was doing. It was a simple knifing, you know. It was a simple knifing in the shower, for God's sake.
Okay.
Isn't watching the opening of Drew Barrymore and Scream 10 times more chilling and exciting?
Again, you cannot compare the two. They're not, it's not the same.
Give me a break. When I went to Universal Studios, they said the shower sequence was one of the most famous scenes of all time. Well, give an audience an opportunity to watch either that or the astonishing death of Piper Laurie in De Palma's Carrie, or the thriller of the final chase in Halloween. And we'll see what brings more reactionary emotion to the audience.
Okay, you can't compare today's audience with the audience back then.
Well, he just did, so what the fuck are you going to do about it?
Bitch.
Well, what can I say about a movie that I will never understand? When people made the new Psycho, some thought it was stupid because of the story.
I don't think that's
sounds
what
like a straw man right there. And so I know I'm not alone. It's just that these old foggies are so hung up on old movies that they are blind to see the modern movies provide for much more entertainment. Some old horror films like Rosemary's Baby
I love that one.
Are excellent.
That is a good one.
That's interesting. But this is not.
No.
As for Bernard Herrmann's score, it's overplayed. Can't he think of anything new to compose?
Okay.
Compare Pino Donaguyo.
Try that again.
No. Lush score from Carrie. Opposed to this and see what's more creative and effective.
When was Carrie made?
Like the 70s?
20 years later. Really?
I think so.
70?
Yeah. What can I say besides people? This movie is simply average, and that it might have been good back then, but it's simply okay now. It's like he understands that the context should be set right there. He was so close. He tries to make up and then he kind of just like let it go. It's like a balloon. He just kind of let it go. Do we still rave about the typewriter just because it was original back then?
Yeah, the wheel is overrated.
Why do we even use that anymore?
Indoor plumbing. Yeah. I mean,
I have spoken, and I guess that Blockbuster Video agrees with me that the movie is too.
When did they write this?
I don't know. Yeah, actually, that's a fair point. Like some of these are written like early 2000s, which is really cool. I have spoken, and I guess that Blockbuster Video agrees with me, that the video is too much of a joke to be placed in the horror section. It's in the drama suspense category, and certainly a thrillless and dated film to belong anywhere else. Psycho remains as the most overrated film of all time, and the new Psycho is a much better improvement.
As I say in most episodes, I hate this person.
It's like, for one, they're straw manning for like the majority of it, and even like giving up certain aspects of it where they're like, "Oh, I could see how within context of whatever, sure, but now, no,
but no, it's not.
But no, it's not. You're like, you were so close, dude.
That doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. Like, yeah,
no,
it's
exactly.
not going to give you the scares that you have now been accustomed to, and your level for horror has shot way up since people's level of horror in the 60s. Mm-hmm. They couldn't even see a belly button.
A lot of horror is like based on society.
It's the progression of society, right. Yeah.
And what's scary at that time, and that's why it's so drastically different over time.
The first movie, the like train movie, when people ran out of the theaters because they thought it was going to come after them. If this person wrote a review, they'd be like, "That's so stupid. That's just a train.
It's a train. We're scared for it." So, with that said, that is our final review. So, Jessica, let's hear your final review for 1960s Psycho.
I don't know. That's hard. I'm going to say a 7.4, probably.
7.4?
Yeah, I really liked it.
Explain yourself. This is a classic.
Well, for me, the rewatchability is there. Mm-hmm. Again, the scare, it's not there. It's not scary. No. You know the storyline basically in and out pretty much. The twists, they're not surprising, you know. But I really like the characters in it. I thought besides Sam and like probably the client at the real estate agency, like I thought the acting was really good. Yeah. I really loved Norman Bates, his that actor's performance. I think that you could kind of insert that performance into a movie today.
Yeah.
Like it's very good. So I definitely recommend it to people who hadn't seen it. I wouldn't say like, oh, well, if you want to watch a scary movie, you want to watch this one. No. But if you want to watch a classic that still holds up pretty well, you watch this one. Yep. So yeah, I would probably rate it like a 7.4.
Okay. Yeah. Let me put that in. I think we're riding that same train. And by that I mean train of thought. I'm going to give it a 7.8.
Ooh, okay.
So depending on how you think about it, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to give it an 8. Mm. And so I had to think about, well, I think it's a higher 7 for me, if it's either high or low. Mm-hmm. It's just where in between. Yeah. And so I also enjoy the acting. Mm-hmm. I am one for like long takes, but sometimes there are certain takes that we're just like, okay, let's get going. Mm-hmm. Like when she was packing and stuff, that scene was actually longer than I think it needed to be. And yeah, she's packing and, this is a big step for her. And this is, can be scary and dangerous, but there's like the whole, like, I'm trying to be specific to the 60s in the context of everything that's happening and what you could get away with, what you couldn't get away with, what's crazy, what's not crazy for like people and standards. Mm-hmm. But I think there's just a couple things within the movie, and I guess it would be more nitpicky rather than like big things. One of them is seeing the boss downtown. Yeah, I don't know why it just bothered me because I'm like, oh, come on. In Phoenix, there couldn't have been any other routes that she could have gone. There could have been a different time. Like, it's just like he just happened to be right there.
It had to happen for the progression of like for certain things in the story because if no one saw her, then how would they know that she left? So it was one of those things that really lifted up the
exactly.
plot.
And that's my thing too. Is it's hard to say. There's a lot of things in this movie that you could take out. Mm-hmm. A lot of things are in there and very
I think there are things that could have been done better.
Right. But I do like the whole toilet thing. I guess specifically as someone who was also helping Hitchcock with this movie, he wanted a toilet to be used, and they had to figure out a reason and a way to get it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up making it a specific way in which now you can't take it out of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have it in the movie now because it's so integral to the progression of the plot.
Yep.
And there's little other stuff too, like I said, like the pieces of paper, how that just happens to still be in there. He forgot, he missed it. It's like, if I just killed someone, I'm cleaning that shit.
I would clean it multiple times too. And we had a week to do it.
We were talking to like, if we're tearing that sheet off, or the shower curtain in there, we're going to do it on all of them too. Like it's going to be like, I ordered new shower curtains. For all of them, not just this specific room. But within that time, I get it. I would say, I feel like part of me feels like I would rate it a little bit higher if I didn't know everything about this movie already. Yeah, it's hard, but there's nothing you can really do about that. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of it within the context of some of the other movies that we watched so far, with I think Exorcist being the next runner up. And I basically had to compare the two.
I know, that was hard. I really like The Exorcist too. And it makes me almost want to like bump up the rating.
I know, but like part of it made me think about some of The Exorcist where I'm like, maybe that kind of, okay. So with that, I'm going to give it a 7.8, and the acting was great too. I'd say I kind of understand the ending in a way when some of the criticism, which is like they haven't over-explained things. I get it too. I'm very much of like a show, don't tell everything.
But I think your point being that, you know, at that point in time, like you said, like there weren't even serial killers, and that's what he was. And so, and the fact that like the psychology behind it wasn't fully fleshed out. So
it's insane to them to think. So they need someone to explain it.
New kind of way of thinking. So they kind of had to have someone literally spell it out for them.
A lot of the stuff was very ahead of its time. So it was really cool to see. But yeah. So with that, thank you so much for listening. We put out 2 episodes a week, so make sure to look for new episodes that come out every Monday and Thursday. For more updates regarding episodes, just give us a follow. You know, give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. You can search for us on at FAD podcast, FAD_podcast, except for Instagram. We can't change that right now. And we're also on YouTube too. So if you want to watch us on YouTube or even Spotify, like however you want to watch, we're on everything. So you can search for us.
Escape us
literally everywhere. We are all up in there. So
and give us suggestions for movies. We need more movies for our Spooky Spinner always.
Oh my God, yes we do. As always, adieu to you, Jessica.
And Folie, adieu to you too.
Blow the man down, and pray pay attention and listen to me. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a deep water sailor just in from Hong Kong. Give me way, blow the man down. If you give me some